Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome today. I'm just waiting for all of the participants to come into the Zoom room. Thank you so much for joining us today for Poets and Writers California Virtual Town Hall. Thanks for the snaps. My name is Jamie Asaye FitzGerald, and I am the Director of Poets and Writers California office and our Readings and Workshops West program. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I'm here with Dan Tran Kong Wen, who will be providing technical support and helping to moderate this town hall. Dan Tran is based in San Francisco. And I see also that my colleague from our New York office, Ricardo Hernandez, is also joining us today. Thank you, Ricardo, for being here. Because colonialism is an ongoing process and lies at the heart of systemic racism, we wish to acknowledge that we operate on the traditional lands of the Tongva, Tataviam, Chumash, and Ohlone peoples, who made their homes in and around the area we now call Los Angeles and San Francisco. I would like to dedicate today's event to the victims and their families of the shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. Please forgive any mispronunciations. Soon Chung Park, Hyun Jung Grant, Sun Cha Kim, Yang Ai Yu, Delaney Ashley Yan, Paul Andre Michaels, Xiao Ji Tan, and Dao Yu Feng. And to all those we have lost to racial violence, and to all those who have suffered from discrimination simply because of the way they look. This has been an exceptionally trying time for many, but here today we can join together in solidarity and to listen as Michael Warr and Chun Yu share with us their beautiful and powerful collaboration, Two Languages, One Community. After the event, I hope that you will find time to rest and heal. I'd like to thank the California Arts Council for its support of these community building events. And then I would also like to ask you all to stay muted while the presentation is happening. But please feel free to use the chat to express appreciation, ask questions, and share resources. During this event, we ask that all attendees practice nonviolence in the chat with each other and with our presenters. Any disruptors will be removed from the event. There will be time after the presentation for questions and sharing of resources. And please note this event is being recorded and a video will be posted on our YouTube channel. We invite you to keep your camera on during discussion, but if you wish to keep it off, that is fine. Now, please welcome Michael Warr and Chun Yu.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is a very challenging time, and thanks to poets and writers for reaching out to Michael and I, immediately for this event. We are really honored to be here. And when violence happens in the society, it's inevitably a collective experience. I think the American society is experiencing these events as one, and no attack is isolated or individual. And unless we find a way to work on this together, it will be hard for us to foresee what kind of future we'll be heading into. But we have the goodness in us. I believe we will find the integrity and the courage to face it all together to bring a better future and a more solid in many ways. Maybe it's a great time to reflect. Also, I always say the Chinese word crisis, which is 危机, has two characters in it. 危 means danger, 机 means opportunity. And we must take this as an opportunity to work together and bring a better future. And I truly believe we can do that. So, two languages, one community project came into existence about six years ago. And in 2014, Michael and I met in a reading series by the Friends of the Public Library, San Francisco Public Library. And the series was hosted by Jack Hirschman, the poet laureate of San Francisco then. And Michael always wanted his poetry to be translated into Chinese, and he saw this person who can do that. So we really enjoyed each other's poetry. So we started immediately collaborating as poets. But almost at the same time, we realized we can bring our communities together in the same fashion. Because it works when people get together to share poetry and stories, and also just to share a meal and to know each other and to learn about each other's culture. So for a few years, we just kept on working on it. We did not foresee what would happen in the future. But in that effort, we collaborated with quite a few cultural organizations. First, we had a workshop series with Oakland Asian Culture Center. We brought writers from both communities together, and many of them are community leaders. We were really honored and fortunate to have them. And we actually published a book called Catching Memory. It's on our website, two languages, one community.com. And we continue to do this through our events and reaching out to different culture institutes, such as the Chinese Culture Center and the MOAD and the Asian Art Museum. And now more are joining us. We have the YBCA, Kearney Street workshop, and a lot of people are joining us for our efforts. And poets and writers have been there from the very beginning, and I feel they supported every event of ours. So thank you again. So Michael, would you like to add more to this?
Actually, thanks, Chun. I just want to say that this type of collaborative work that we're doing needs to be highly visible, and I want to encourage everyone to spread the word and to find their own ways of fighting the hate and finding ways to defend and protect. And we are most effective when we do that together. So thank you for the introduction. And I want to acknowledge that I live and work and create on land that is ancestral and unceded territory of the Ohlone, Ramaytush, and Yelamu people here in San Francisco. And I'm just gonna go into my reading now. And when Chun and I first met and started collaborating, we naturally kind of gravitated toward poems that were big common themes, like family. And those broad themes, things like food, for instance, those broad themes, they still allowed us to be very specific in our cultural experiences, our unique cultural experiences, while exploring our commonalities. And the brief poem that I'm going to start with is titled Black Star. And it's a poem about my mother. It's an example of a commonality that we found in writing about our families. And I'm going to share it in English, talk a little bit about it after Chun reads the poem in Chinese. And I want to screen share with you in this case, so you can see the image of my mother. 1 second. Black Star, Gay-No War, 1932 to 2015. She got called Shinola outside her name, as slight against her blackness, by lost souls caught inescapably in her dark attraction and blinded by her radiance in the sky. Now Chun will read in Chinese.
黑明星作为对他的黑的蔑视，他被那些失落在他无法逃脱的黑色的吸引力中，和被他在天空中耀眼的光芒照瞎了眼睛的灵魂们，外号为西努拉邪游。
Thank you, Chun. So this poem was a revelation for me, or this photograph was a revelation for me, because I saw it later in life. But I remember my mother talking to me about how she used to be like teased, and people would talk bad about her because of the color of her skin. My mother is even, darker than me. And when I first saw this photograph, the first thing that struck me was that she was so beautiful, that she looked like a movie star, yet people could not see beyond her skin color. And when we start talking about this and Chun start, translating the poem, one of the things that came up that I remember is that the word Shinola, for instance, is a word that was used in a derogatory way. People would call my mother by that name. And when Chun was starting to translate it, it was not something that meant the same thing in Chinese or in China, as the word actually was associated with a luxury watch company. And I didn't even know that. I mean, and I found out that Shinola was the same company that created the shoe polish, and they rebranded, and so Chun had to make certain decisions about that to make sure that the poem, that the meaning was interpreted in a way that was understandable in Chinese. I just want to say this, one of the things I love about translation is that you do have to dig deep into the culture of the other person. So I don't know, Chun, you probably have something to share about that process.
Translate the translation process is really no small deal. It's complex, and it brings, there's so much, the way Michael writes, there's so much cultural background, and I grew up in China when China was quite isolated. I never saw American and I did not grow up with this shoe polish thing. I had no idea, so I struggled with it. So I basically I have to say the shoe polish in the poem in order to have it revealed, to have people realize what that means. So that, yeah, so we have endless stories like this we can share when we have time. Yeah. With you guys.
And just one point, the thing about that Chun told me, because we would have these conversations, before and during and after the translations. And in China, if you refer to shoe polish, it's black, right? There's not like white shoe polish, blue shoe polish, red shoe polish. And so that worked for the.
There is a brown, but normally you think of black, but there is also two typical ones are the black and the brown one. Yeah, but
thanks, Chun.
But people get it when I say that. Yeah.
So I'm going to read my second poem, and this poem was written a year ago in response to the violent attacks against the Asian people In San Francisco and around the world, during the beginning of the COVID-19 crises. And, Chun and I were asked by the Chinese Cultural Center to participate in a web-based artist initiative in response to the pandemic. It was called How Are You Processing? And the premiere reading of this poem that I wrote in response to that took place as a selfie video that was shot on the stairs of the Asian Arts Museum with the bronze guardian lions in the background, and as well as City Hall. So you can see that at our website, Two Languages, One Community, as a video. To your assailant who attacks us all, do you call yourself God-fearing, devoted to do on to others? Does your God condone your violence, your ignorance, your corruption? Does your God hate your neighbor like you do? Does your God share your love for prophets bearing false witness, fueling your grievance fever? Do you swallow the lies that they regurgitate? Do you really need a reason? Are you truly a true believer of both God and golden calf? Does the all-knowing know you? Do they love you as you are? Does it matter that they are watching your naked depravity? Do you pray before you pray on innocence in this guilty world? Do you have your God's blessing, or are you as godless as you seem? Did your father teach you to beat the mean and maim? Is he proud of your cowardice? Does your mother say, "Well done, son"? Did they train you in backwardness to feel bigger in your smallness, content with acts of uselessness? Is your inner bully seething still beneath your concealed surface? Are you comforted in your criminality, stupefied by superiority, simply insane or lost? Who are you?
致攻击你们的人，他们也在攻击我们所有人。你自称敬畏上帝吗？你致力于己所不欲，勿施于人吗？你的上帝宽恕了你的暴力、你的无知、你的腐败吗？你的上帝像你这样仇恨你的邻居吗？你的上帝会认同你的带着假见证，让你的愤怒不平不断发烧的所谓的先知的爱吗？你吞下他们反复口吐的谎言吗？你真的需要理由吗？你是你的神和金牛犊真正的信徒吗？你那全知的神认识你吗？他们会爱这样的你吗？你在乎他们看着你赤裸的堕落吗？在袭猎这个有罪的世界上的无辜者时，你祈祷吗？你有上帝的祝福吗？还是像你看起来那样没有上帝？你的父亲教你去攻击、贬低和残害他人吗？他会为你的怯懦感到骄傲吗？你的母亲会说干得好，儿子吗？他们训练你倒退落后了吗？你卑鄙渺小时感到更强大吗？你满足于自己无意的行为吗？隐藏在你的表面下的恶霸还在沸腾吗？你在被优越性麻木了的犯罪中感受到了安慰吗？是疯了还是迷路了？你是谁？
Thank you, Chun Yu. I'm going to read one more poem, and this is a poem that I've been writing it since 2018. I've been adding names of Black people who've been unjustly killed by the police. So it's a serial poem that I continue to update. And I'm only going to share a third of the poem. There unfortunately are so many names that it takes at least 10 minutes to read the whole thing. And Chun has not only translated this excerpted version, but she's translated the entire poem, which is going to appear in Obsidian Journal this spring. It's called What Not to Do an unfinished poem. Breathe, Eric Gardner choked. Sell, Lucy's. Resist to death. Stand, Amadou Diallo in vestibule. Carry, wallet, look out of place. Act suspicious, 41 fired, 19 bullets kill. Park, Tanya Haggerty on side of road. Talk, on cell on side of road. Shot, on side of road. Drive, Philando Castile with broken brake lights. Carry, legal firearm. Announce you have a gun. Shout, not reaching for gun. Shot, 5 bullets, 2 to heart. Approach, Oscar Grant, the police. Beg not to shoot. Kneel, shot anyway, in back. Carry, Tamir Wright's toy gun. Shot with real bullets. Carry, Remain Brisbane prescription bottle. Shot, 2 bullets to torso. Not carry, Keith Lamont Scott, a gun when told to drop it. Shot. B, Natasha McKinnon, schizophrenic. B, superhuman, stunned while shackled, 50,000 votes to death. B, John Crawford, an imminent threat. Shop for Walmart air rifle. Carry Walmart air rifle at Walmart. Talk on cell phone at Walmart. Shot with real bullets at Walmart. B, George Floyd, a suspect. B, a 6'7" black man. B, claustrophobic, asphyxiated, knee on neck while handcuffed. Run, Stephen Clark, through grandmother's yard. Carry, cell phone. Shot, 20 bullets, fired, 8 hit, primarily in back. Jog, Ahmaud Arbery, shot, 2 bullets, killed while hunted. Sleep, Breonna Taylor in bed, shot, 8 bullets, killed. Sleep, Rashard Brooks at Wendy's. Flee for daughter's birthday. Point, did taser over shoulder. Shot, 2 bullets in back. Walk, Elijah McClain home. Look sketchy. Play music. Wear ski mask. Shop for iced tea. Carry iced tea. Act crazy. Cry, can't breathe. Beg to go home. Be superhuman. Be anemic. Be suspicious. Be on something. Be undetermined. Choke to death. Breathe.
不要做什么，一首未完成的诗。呼吸，埃里克加纳被窒息，卖香烟，反抗致死。跟着看，拉蒙特亨特被射杀，从后脑勺发出阿凯古丽刺耳的声音，被射杀，意外的。站立，阿拉杜迪亚洛在门廊携带钱包闲逛，边走边看，不自在的举动可疑。41枪打了9颗子弹，杀死。步行，特伦斯·克鲁奇双手举在空中，看似醉酒，带着一个非常空洞的表情，被射杀，从后面。开车，塞缪尔·杜博斯没有牌照，被射杀，头部。开车，沃尔特·科斯特尾灯坏了，被射杀，从后面。移动，肯德拉·詹姆斯到驾驶座，在司机被捕后被射杀，从头部。坐，乔丹 爱德华兹在车里手无寸铁，被射杀，用步枪。倒车，戴安特亚伯太突然的30颗子弹射出10颗杀死。停车，谭尼亚哈格西在路边谈话，在手机上，在路边被射杀，在路边开车，费兰多卡斯提尔刹车灯坏了，携带合法武器，宣布你有枪，喊叫没有伸手拿枪，被射杀，5颗子弹打到心脏。爬行，丹尼尔谢佛朝警官们按指示拉松了的运动裤，太突然的，祈求不要开枪，被射杀，还是接近奥斯卡格兰特警察，请求不要开枪，跪下，被射杀，还是从后面没能桑德拉布兰德示意举止太傲慢，发现被吊在牢房里。携带安东尼拉马尔史密斯被栽赃的武器被射杀。5颗子弹。携带塔米尔赖斯玩具枪被射杀，用真的子弹。携带卡梅隆蒂尔曼 BB 枪被射杀。携带鲁曼布斯里本处方瓶被射杀，2颗子弹打到躯干。携带拉昆麦克唐纳刀在路上被射杀，16颗子弹。携带迈尔斯霍尔园艺棒有分裂情感障碍被射杀。携带史蒂芬德马尔科泰勒棒球棒在沃尔玛有狂躁症发作被射杀。没有携带基斯拉蒙特科斯特枪，当被告知要放大时被射杀。放下卡胡安雷一把枪，后来发现的被射杀，从后面是娜塔莎麦肯纳精神分裂，是超人，被烤蚀被电击5万伏特致死，是塔尼莎安德森躁郁症，头部被砸到人行道上，是米歇尔雪莉躁郁症，开车时30颗子弹8颗打到胸部背胳膊，是谢里斯弗朗西斯没服药，4个警察压迫窒息在床上，是雅尔坎贝尔有自杀倾向，是没有武器被射杀，是伊维特史密斯有武装没带武器被射杀在门廊，是麦克布朗体积太大和开枪者同一身高被射杀，6颗子弹2颗打倒头部，是约翰克劳福特一个迫在眉睫的威胁。购买沃尔玛气步枪，携带沃尔玛气步枪，在沃尔玛谈话，在手机上，在沃尔玛被射杀，用真的子弹在沃尔玛。是泰伦斯富兰克林一个嫌疑犯被射杀，5颗子弹到头部。乔治弗洛伊德一个嫌疑犯，一个6英尺7的黑人，是有幽闭恐惧症，窒息，膝盖压在脖子上，戴着手套，是托尼麦克达尔变性者，移动与使用武器的动作一致被射杀，摆姿势。埃泽尔福特一个直接威胁被射杀，精神分裂，展示。小曼努埃尔洛金斯一个刻薄的表情被射杀，当着女儿们的面。打电话叫查丽娜莱尔斯警察有精神病被射杀，7颗子弹。
Thank you. Are you done?
是 no 走回以利亚麦克莱恩家，看起来可疑。放音乐，挥手，戴滑雪面具，买冰茶，拿着冰茶，反抗接触，举止疯狂，解释不能准确的呼吸，展示超人的力量，祈求回家是贫血、内向、多疑、激动、紧张，喝了什么，用了药，是死因待定的，被窒息致死，呼吸。Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chun.
Thank you. Now I am going to move to my own poetry reading. So I'm going to share some slides first. Thank you for your patience. So here, what you see is a Catching Memory, Two Language, One Community workshops first book produced from our workshops with the Oakland Asian Culture Center. So we both write about our beautiful mother. And so I'm going to read the poem about my mom. And somehow I am not able to see the whole screen. Let's see. View. Okay. Okay. So the English. When I was born. Oh, sorry. So Beauty Lu, my mother's last name is Lu, and ever since I remember, people called her Beauty Lu. So Beauty Lu, people called Mama Beauty Lu. Her family name is Lu. Her face a smooth oval shape, her skin a light olive color. Under her eyebrows like willow leaves, her eyes were bright and clear as a blue sky above, where I never saw a trace of fear or doubt, where my childhood glimmered with a golden lining in the raging storm of a tragic revolution, which she withstood with her beauty and courage, my heaven on earth. 陆美人，人们称妈妈为陆美人，她姓陆，她有着椭圆形的面庞，浅橄榄色的皮肤，她柳叶般的眉毛，柳叶般的sorry，她有着柳叶般的眉毛，她的眼睛如蓝天般清澈，在那里我从未见过一丝恐惧，在那里我的童年发出金色的光芒，她以美与勇气抵挡着一场悲剧的革命，赋予我人间乐土。The next I will read a poem called The Map. This is a poem I feel that have earned the United Nations of Tears around the world. In those difficult times, we think about our parents, and they are the ones that's closest to our heart. And I wrote this poem because my father always check a map whenever I'm visiting home. He always want to find out where I am. And even I'm only like a few blocks away going to see some friends, and he and then my mom would bring this map out. They will nail down exactly where on this street I will be. So I never forget that. So this is the image always stick in my mind until one day, and I said there is a poem in it. So here I give you the poem, The Map. When I was born, your bosom was a map. I occupied all of it in your cradling arms. When I began to walk, your eyesight was a map. I learned my steps, toddling and waddling in your adoring gaze. When I started school, your mind became a map. I ventured out and back, morning and night, in your unceasing care. When I grew up and left home, from hometown to other towns, home country to other countries, your heart became the map. I searched far and wide, high and low, for my direction and a place in the world, in your loving thoughts. Each time I set out for a journey, you asked for my destination, studied an open map, and accurately located the point of my being. Then one day you picked up a magnifying glass, eyes moving closer and closer, hands trembling more and more. Finally, at a loss, no longer seeing clearly the lines and points on the map, you hold me in your heart. Growing older and older, you can now only walk in my eyes, fumbling steps every trip outside an adventure. From now on, I will walk by your side so you can lean on me when we are at a loss, not knowing where to go. Love is the map. So I hope with the map, we will learn, we will find our way, and we will be guided, and we will head to our better future. Now I need to stop the share. Okay, somehow stop sharing, yes. Okay, so now I'm going to read the Chinese version of the map, which was first published in Xinhua Daily, the Chinese newspaper, and in the art session. They actually rarely publish poetry, but somehow they made an exception. So 地图，刚出生时，你的胸怀是一张地图，我是那地图的全部，在你的怀抱中。刚走路时，你的目光是一张地图，我在那地图中摇摇学步，在你的注视中。上学时，我走出了家门，你的脑海是一张地图，我在那地图中朝出暮归，在你的牵挂中。长大后，我离开了家，从故乡到外乡，从祖国到异国。你的心是一张地图，我在那地图中摸索方向，寻找位置，在你的想念中。每当我开始一个新的旅程，你总会打开一张地图，询问我的去处，实时准确地找到我的所在。后来你拿起了放大镜，眼睛离地图越来越近，手抖得越来越厉害。终于茫然中，你已经看不清地图上的点与线。我在你的心里。渐行渐慢，有一天，你只能在我的目光里蹒跚。每一次出行都是一场冒险。从此，我将把你搀扶在我的臂弯。当我们茫然不知所向，爱是一张地图。The next poem I'm going to read is called Cotton. When I grew up, in world history class, the Black history here was taught in world history class. So that began my connection to the African American communities here. But most of it was from my imagination as a child. As I said, we were isolated from the rest of the world. We were in the middle of the Cultural Revolution. But I understood as a child what these people went through. And so I give you this poem, Cotton. All I could think of was little black hands picking, and picking snow white cotton. When I was a child, learning about your people's fate on the other side of the ocean, in a winter classroom with no heating, my country, red and deep in revolution, isolated from the rest of the world. I heard slavery, a term ancient and distant, re-denounced where I sat with frozen toes, trembling with indignation and a yearning for justice. The original shan, the pure goodness at the heart of a child, revolution or not, red, black, or other. I had never met a child of another color. All I could think of is little black faces, smiling like blooming cotton flowers, bursting warmth in a summer harvest. All I could think of was little black hands giving warm white cotton away, little black hands snatching from hands of mama and grandma, little black hands forever lost in the vast world, little black hands forever reaching at a loss, little black hands forever wiping tears, clear and salty, just like my own, when I missed my mama as I snuggled next to my grandma under an ancient oil lamp. Her hands roughened from cotton picking for the ism and the revolution, which we must all love and give everything to, stitching and cushioning shoes night after night with a few handfuls of cotton rationed to her, and a long thread she spun with a wooden spindle, spinning since the beginning of time and memory to keep my feet warm. Little black hands, where was your cotton? Where was your thread? Where were your mama and grandma? I had never met a child of another color. When I learned your history as a child, all I could feel was your ocean of tears flooding into the yellow sea, rushing the shore 100 miles away. I do have a Chinese version of this, but I will skip it due to time concerning. And the next poem I will give you is called The Lighthouse. I am a first generation immigrant. And when I first came here, I did not know much about the immigration history of the Chinese people here. And I learned gradually from my friends who are, whose families have been here for for a few generations, for 100 years. I'm working on a project with my friend Arnie Jingan Wang. He's an animator who did many amazing animation films. Many children, American children had watched, even Chinese children are watching Dora the Explorer. And his family has been here for over 100 years. And so we are working on a graphic novel on his family history, and as well as a story about the flying tigers. His uncle, who is about 100-year old, was in World War II, was working for the United States Air Force in China as part of the Flying Tigers. And so the history was tough. What the Chinese Exclusion Act brought a lot of suffering to the community who had come here to build as early as the railway and the gold rush, and then railway building time. So like the lighthouse I'm writing about is at Point Bonita at the Marine Headlands. I learned from a ranger that it's not on record, but he believed the story is true, that the tunnel that leads to the lighthouse was built by the Chinese laborers after they finished the railway building, and they were unwanted. But this tunnel cutting through this gigantic rock, it's extremely dangerous to build. And people fear collapsing. But the Chinese laborers were really great with hand tools, and they were willing to risk their lives. So hence we have the lighthouse today. And I wrote this poem, the first draft first, then I learned about the history of the lighthouse, the tunnel to the lighthouse, and then this poem completely come together for me. The lighthouse. An iron door opens to a dark tunnel through a giant rock, chiseled a long time ago by bare hands and hand tools. Hands that come from across the ocean, hands that chiseled through the continent, hands that built the railroad Trans-America. A land these hands touched deeply, a land these hands died for, a land these hands survived, a land these hands grew to love and wanted to make home. The headland of the continent, America, a giant dark rock probing into the vast water, one side the raging ocean, the other side the calm bay. Entering the tunnel, the narrow path, my mind, engulfed by darkness and unknowing, floats in the suddenly edgeless universe. All senses seem lost, except one, that the world is split. One side the homeland, one side the land of home. Until after arriving at the end of the tunnel, I see on the tip of the rock the end of the headland, bare in rain and wind, fog and cloud, sun and the moon, is the lighthouse standing above the raging Pacific, like a heart beating to shine for both shores. 灯塔，铁门打开，黑暗的隧道穿过很久以前以螺手和手把工具掘通的巨石，来自大洋彼岸，着急横穿新大陆，修成太平洋铁路的辛劳之手，深深触摸过的大地，为之而死去的大地，幸存于斯的大地，已然爱上的大地，希望成为家园的大地的夹角，巨大的黑暗的岩石，美洲大地的夹角，深入广阔的水域，一侧是汹涌的大海，一侧是平静的海湾，进入狭窄的隧道，脑海被黑暗与无明吞噬，突然漂浮于无边的宇宙，万感顿时唯存一念，世界是分裂的，一边是故乡，一边是家园，直到走出隧道的尽头，才豁然而见夹角之端，岩石之上裸露在风和雨、雾和云、日和月中，是凝立于是伫立于汹涌的太平洋之上的灯塔，像一颗星，为此岸和彼岸无尽的跳动闪耀。Thank you. That concludes my reading. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to Michael Warr and Chun Yu for sharing your incredibly beautiful and powerful poems and your collaborative effort and the translations. It was wonderful to hear, and your words of hopefulness and optimism also are really appreciated. Um, I would like to open things up to the group here to see if anybody has any questions for the presenters or anything that they would like to share. Because we have 2 pages of people, I think maybe questions can go in the chat, or you can use the raise lower hand function, and we'll try to catch sight of you.
I have a question just about the process for translation. Do you two work together as a team, or is it Chun Yu, you make a translation and then I wonder how that works as a collaboration. Is it from the beginning, or is it something later, or it's 2 separate works that you're doing? Because I'd love to hear what you've done. It's so beautiful, and thank you for sharing.
You should go first, Chun.
Michael, you want to start answering that?
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead, Chun?
You go ahead.
Okay. From my perspective, the non-Chinese speaking part of this collaboration, I mean, first of all, I've been translated in a number of languages, and this is the most recent one that I've been translating in, and at this point, probably the most, because we've been doing a lot of work. And what I had found in the past, I think the first language I was translated into was Haitian, but the second one was in German. And I actually was in long distance conversation over fax machine with the translator. And boy, that was amazing. That's where I really learned how deep you had to go into the meaning that was based in the culture. You know, because just translating the word black in German, he had to, do a lot of thinking about which part of Germany would he go to for that, for that particular language. And so in terms of process, when Chun and I first met, she just asked me to send some poems that I selected, right? And then, fortunately, the translator gets to look at the work and decide, okay, what of this am I going to actually take on? But what I find fascinating about the process is that we do come together once there's conversation about the poem when it's read by the translator. They have questions about it. But then there's questions that come again after the first draft of the translation is done. And so we did a lot of talking to each other in those early translations about meaning, because it's really kind of critical that the translation is getting across the underlying meaning of the word and not just the word itself.
Well, thank you, Michael. That's very well said. Give me a minute to recover from the readings. Yes, it's a fascinating journey for me, including I first started translating my own poetry, and I know how hard it is because I understand every word that I have written down. Yet to express in another language is entirely a different experience. Of course, there so much that's connected, but to find the right word in another language is really not easy. And the culture differences and every nuance that you need to take into consideration and not to get really lost. So when Michael comes with his poetry, I have to say it's very challenging, and I am careful with which poems to say yes to, because it's out of respect to the poet's original work, right? If too much is compromise, I wouldn't initiate the process. So, but this is really such a learning process. I think for each of us to understand each other's culture and the subtle expressions in the languages. And it's a lot of fun to play with because Chinese is so different as a language than English. Its history, the way it looks, the way, you know, the sound of things, how it rhymes. I mean, by the way, I write free verse. I don't know how to rhyme in either language. I kind of feel rather free by it. But occasionally I do rhyme. It just happens. So yeah, this is like, I really encourage everybody that's out there with skills in two languages to try to translate somebody's poetry. It's a very rewarding process, as hard as it is. Yeah, so for Michael and I, we are continuing building this project also by, I am translating other poets from both communities. And in our next event, we will have Maxine Hong Kingston, Elle Yang, and Jenny Lim. Jenny was just here a while ago. She's maybe still here. Yeah, and Alpha Weaver, and they will be part of our next event. I have translated at least one poem from each of them. We're putting an anthology together, and those poets write very differently. But it's going to be a very exciting journey, and I welcome other poets and artists, or if you're not poets and artists, I have scientist friends here. If you want to be part of this, let us know. And there are many ways to do this. And I know many of you are extremely talented. You have unused talent that you can use to build this together with us. Yeah.
And I just want to say one more thing about this particular question, that that part of the collaboration is also that I'm an editor. And so I often read Chun's first drafts of her, well, I shouldn't say first drafts, but I often read drafts of her poems. And that also entails a lot of deep conversation in terms of what the meaning is here. And the thing I want to give an example of is recently, this last week, we were part of a reading in honor of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. And I was asked to contribute to a anthology that's coming out. You know, it's supposed to have come out for his 102nd birthday. And I wrote a poem called What is Poetry, after Lawrence Ferlinghetti's poem, What is Poetry? And each line is just, you know, this is an example of one of the lines. Poetry is a colibri hummingbird dancing on magnetic currents. And every line is practically a line like that. And each line starts off, poetry is. Well, Chun heard me read that poem last week at the Ferlinghetti reading. And afterwards, she told me that she was interested in translating the poem. And my response was, my God, I don't see how you could translate that poem. But the process is, she expressed interest in it. And so I send her the poem, right? And we haven't discussed it yet, but I'm fascinated by what happens in that process, that the poem could even be thought of as being translatable. So it's pretty heavy.
We will see. We will see. I mean, the other thing I want to bring up is, I would love this to happen intergenerationally in families who are bilingual, right? So I think often the grandparents and parents, maybe they are first generation immigrants, they have stories to tell. And sometimes they only feel comfortable telling it in their own native languages. But the younger generation are brought up here. They have the language skills to help them to tell their stories, and then to be intimate with the language of their original country. And I think that would be a really beautiful experience. That if I keep on talking about that, so far we don't have a program like that yet, but I would encourage people to do that in their own community. And also that way they can also translate people's poems from another community and read it in another language to their family members, and then that helps building connections. I think that's very meaningful. And instead of it's important to educate people about history and all of that, but such kind of connection is so precious and it's very powerful. Sometimes it takes only one poem to change a person's mind, because I come from a culture, poetry was one of the most important driving force in the culture and the history. And it's very deep. And in Chinese history, sometimes one poem can save lives or destroy a person, destroy a life, and even a kingdom. So there are many, many examples of that. I just want to, mention that to you, so you realize, that the importance of poetic language in Chinese history. And we, as immigrants, we bring it here. And I do. I mean, it's still in me. So that's why I am tirelessly doing those poetry events, writing poetry. I never get tired of it. And so I just love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for our presenters?
I would just like to ask Chun Yu to expand on that, about how poetry can save or destroy a life. And could you give an example of how that's happened in China? It's fascinating, the conversation you started here, and I feel it hasn't ended.
Yes, I mean, many Chinese, because in China, we have a scholars exam, court exam system. And so it's actually a fascinating system, more than 1400 years old, more than that. And so what happened is the court opens the examination to the whole country. You could be from the poorest family, but you have to be a man. That's pretty bad. No woman, however talented you are, you cannot really participate in that. So these exams, the major tasks are for the people who participate they write. They have to be able to write poetry and essays. So that puts it really high, in the on the level of different arts. Actually, poetry was regarded as the highest art for a long time, and for some reason, I mean, it's just in us. And Confucius compiled the first book of songs, more than 2,000 years ago, and from then on, and then comes Qu Yuan, the Chu Ci, and actually the first poet of China. From then, the poetry has become really big. And then many rulers are poets themselves. They, aspire to become immortal poets. One poet I write in a graphic novel, his name is Li Yu. He lived about 1,000 years ago, and he wrote his last poem. He was a prisoner of Song Dynasty's first emperor who took over his country. He wrote a poem. He talked about his feelings about the country he lost, the kingdom he lost. And then guess what? The emperor learned about his sorrow. He's still thinking about his own country. He was poisoned. He died for it. So I mean, because the reason for him to pay with his life is the power of words were fully recognized. Because his poetry somehow went back to his old kingdom. People, burned incense along the Yangtze River and reciting his poetry remembered him as their talented poet emperor. So that there are quite a few stories here. If you watch the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or the Three Kingdoms, you will see those people, those rulers of different regions. Many of them write they become immortal poets, and their poems are forever remembered. So that's how, yeah. So it's very deep, yeah.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, and it also unites people, and it does when a great poem appears and people become united, inspired by it, and yeah,
we saw with Amanda Gorman's inaugural poem, it just inspired so many people. So I just wanted to point everyone's attention to some resources that we've included in the chat. The editors of Poets and Writers magazine have worked to put together a list of resources in support of the AAPI community. And it's a really great list if you're looking for ways to participate or support. There's information in there about reporting hate crimes and also bystander intervention trainings. Some really great things in there. And back in last June, the editors also put together another resource list in support of justice and action. This was in response to the killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And it hasn't been updated recently, but it still has some great resources. And then recently at one of our events, the poet Sarah Borjas recommended Academics for Black Lives as a resource to receive trainings. And so I just wanted to be sure everyone knew that there were all these things out there. And if you also have resources related to this topic, please feel free to put them in the chat. And also, if you have events coming up related or ideas that you would like to share, I would like to open the floor to the group to share anything like that.
Oh, gee, I see that I'm still not muted. I'm sorry. Well, hi, since I'm not muted, I just wanted to remind everyone that there will be a fantastic event happening in collaboration with the Wendy Museum of the Cold War this Friday with Michael Warr and poet Kathleen Ossip, titled Transformations, the Cold War of Poetry and Protest, bringing together, I actually have their books here, bringing together Kathleen's book, The Cold War, and the anthology Michael edited of Poetry and Protest. So this is going to be a fantastic panel discussion that we're going to have. So I'm inviting everyone there. I saw that you just posted the link there, so thank you very much. Just wanted to let everyone know about that.
Thank you, Michael. I mean, Mark, sorry, Mark. I'm writing in the chat, so my brain is crossfiring. I see some, oh, that's the Wendy Museum event in the chat, great. And we also have some upcoming events next week. On Tuesday, there is another town hall featuring editors of anthologies related to fire and water in California. We're coming up on our spring and hot summer months. So this is going to be an ongoing issue, and they're going to talk about what they learned while putting together these anthologies. So I hope you'll join us for that. In addition, on May 9th, there will be a workshop leaders retreat virtually with a special guest, Tongo Eisen Martin. And the workshop leaders retreat is designed for teaching artists who work with underserved or marginalized groups. And that would be anyone from, elders to at-risk youth, the incarcerated, homeless, formerly homeless. So if you are one of those teaching artists who work in the community, please email me if you're interested in attending the retreat. It is free, and it's usually held in person, but this year we're going to see how it goes online, like everything else. So do email me, and I will put my email in the chat.
Can I say something about the leadership retreat?
Yes, please.
They're absolutely fantastic. And everyone that I've been through has been so inspiring and just great to be talking with other teaching artists. And the presenters are always out. Tongo, probably all of you know Tongo, he's brilliant. And I just want to thank you, Jamie, for this one. It's a wonderful experience. It used to be wonderful in person, and virtually it's wonderful too. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Margot.
I also want to mention a couple more things. So I am an YBCA 100 honoree. The program honors community leaders and change makers for the society. So they have we are going to have a big party on this Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning. I hope you all come to join us. And this year it has to be virtual. And normally I could invite all of you, just come to the center. So please join us. And also on the same day, Jack Hirschman, the former poet laureate of San Francisco, has invited me to read in Chinatown on the square for in solidarity with the Asian community. So it's at 2 o'clock. I know Michael and Jenny Lim they were both invited, but they have another event. But I will be there at 2 o'clock in Chinatown. Yeah. So I hope to see you.
Yeah, and now I would like to invite you to share if you have ideas about ways that writers can help support each other through this time, can help be in solidarity for peace and justice. Please do share your ideas. I'm interested to hear what writers are thinking about and what writers are doing. Kind of like this collaboration that Michael and Chun have. Are there other things that you have seen or that you wish would come into being?
I just would like to encourage everybody, if you have not done so already, to sign up and take a free bystander intervention training. I put the one from Hollaback because that's the one I did, but there are a number of organizations in the Bay Area that are now offering this, and it was tremendously helpful.
Thank you for sharing that, Lizette. I'm actually signed up for one of those Hollaback trainings. They're going on now. I think the one I'm doing is on April 8th, but there are a few dates. As we've seen with some of the most recent events, there are things bystanders can do.
And many people in my writing studio are taking it.
That's great.
One of the things, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Michael.
One of the things that I've noticed in response to this, the recent violence, and there's a lot of people and organizations who are responding with both public and online events, and I find that it's an opportunity to share art that serves in solidarity with those events and with people who are expressing their dismay at what's going on, but also looking for ways to react. And so I think it's really important to let people know what what's happening and what we're doing. That's why at the beginning I said that I think it's very critical for the type of collaboration that Chun and I are doing, that this is visible, um, that people are aware that it's going on, because it gives an opportunity for people to create their own way of responding. And I just think it's a very important time to do it, and we should take advantage of the fact in this kind of news system where things are on the screen for a second and then they disappear, that the fact that there's attention being paid to such issues as the violence in our society, specifically this hatred against Asians, for example, that we all know it's not new. It takes some particular atrocious incident and everything kind of happening at the same time where, someone has their phone, their camera out, where all of a sudden it becomes viral. But it's not because it's never happened before. So I just think it's important to take advantage of the fact that attention is being paid, and we have to insert, inject our art into, those responses.
Yes, Karen.
Thank you so much. It's been really a beautiful afternoon. As far as bystander violence or intervention or non-intervention or something along the lines of nonviolent peace force training, which I've had in my own home, I wonder if there are those who feel with that kind of training, one could have somehow stopped George Floyd's death. It's my question, really. Because I think that's what's on our minds, is how can bystanders intervene in a way that does not accelerate or does not in some way not help, but how can bystanders actually help? I'm hoping that training leads us in that direction. But that is a question. To Michael,
I think,
or to Chun Yu, I don't know.
I think the purpose of the trainings are, I think, I haven't done one yet, but from what I've read, they're to empower individuals with the tools to interrupt and to perhaps deter what they can. But at a certain point, we're not superheroes, obviously.
Right.
There's only so much an individual can do, I think,
yeah,
unless
right.
You're like the guys on the plane who jumped the terrorists and took them down, but
so it takes strength too.
It's a very, very difficult thing because there's endangerment for so many people.
Right, of course.
However, I do think the trainings can help.
We all saw there were some amazing attempts at intervention at that time that somehow it didn't take. They weren't able to get through. But I was amazed at the heroism of so many people who were bystanders.
I think it's a very good question because it's also much discussed in my Chinese community. When things happen, what should a bystander do, and what does the law say? I mean, we also have to learn like what kind of force can one apply, even the degree of force, I think is defined, like how much force you can use to rescue somebody, which makes things very complicated. But of course, we want to help. We don't want to just watch a violent act go on. It doesn't feel right. But I don't think we need somebody who know the rules to tell us. We can learn. I highly recommend everybody to find some place to learn about, you know, to find suggestions for those things.
I mean, I wondered even using the term citizen's arrest. I arrest you, patrolman, officer, whomever, Chauvin, I don't know. I'm making a citizen's arrest and I have people around me as witnesses. Stop what you're doing. You're arrested. I don't know, but I'm throwing all of these things out. It's such an issue because it will happen again.
Right. I
It
don't know if
is. It
in
is.
the audience we have any experts who can answer this better for us. Help.
I'm not an
Well,
expert, but if you, I can't speak to other trainings. I've only done the hollowback training, but they will give you several different modes of intervening, and you can select the mode that feels most comfortable for you. And that will be different for different kinds of people. And one of the strategies includes roping people in who are nearby, especially people who are in stores, like managers, security guards standing in front of banks and things like that, using your voice, using pattern interrupt, very creative means of intervention. And it doesn't always require a deus ex machina type of approach to do it. If you have that kind of background and training, you can do that, but it's not required.
And I just want to say that again, that expose is one of the most powerful tools. If that young woman had not taken that video of what happened with George Floyd, there would be we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing today, because the police typically get away with just saying that they felt endangered, or it's the same illogic over and over again. But because there was a video of it, it gets closer to something being done. Even with the video, we can't be guaranteed that something's going to be done. But I just want to emphasize the courage of that young woman who was frightened out of her mind, but she rose above it, and because she knew that it had to be captured, because again, it's not the first time. So I just think that the expose during these occurrences and afterwards, has to be the value of that has to be seen. It's not everything. It has to be combined with other actions. But I think that that's a very critical part of it. There was a young man there who was trained in martial arts. I mean, he could have he could have really put a whooping on those police officers, but they were armed. And so under that circumstance, he was not going to do that. Other people could have been injured as well. So it's all conditions, time, and place as well. You have to respond to the situation that you're in. But in the long run, it's going to be mass action that is going to change this situation. And there'll be many individual actions along the way, but ultimately it's going to take a lot of mass action to make a real difference.
Very wise.
Thank you. I want to. We're running out of time, so I want to close with a few announcements. I want to let you know that there is a new tool that Poets and Writers has developed called Poets and Writers Groups. And it is a tool to help writers find each other and to form and join writing groups. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I encourage you to check it out. Dan Tran will post that in the chat as a resource. Also, on our YouTube channel, all of the town halls and check-ins we hold are going to be shared there, and this one will as well. We have a literary events calendar. If you are doing events, please feel free to post them on our calendar. It's free and easy to share your events nationally on our calendar. And then last but not least, we have a short survey form that I would love for you to fill out if you could just take a minute or two to give me your feedback about this event, what you liked about it, what was missing, what you'd like to see in the future. I really appreciate all of your feedback, positive and constructively critical. So with that, I would like again to thank our presenters, Michael and Chun, for your work and your bravery and your generosity. And I want to thank all of you who came. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope that you all stay safe and take care of your loved ones during this time. And we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you,
See you next
everybody.
time.
Thank you so much for being here.